ORS. I'm sorry, there was a recording acknowledgement there for me, a notification. So I hope that didn't interfere. But yes, just like to acknowledge ORS and Lawrence Riley and Brian Collentine for their assistance in putting together this workshop today. And just to give you a little bit of an overview, I'm sure many of you have already had experience with LEADER in the past, perhaps with some funding. We are in County Westmeath now for 25 years, providing support to communities and enterprises. Overall, it's the 30th anniversary of LEADER this year, and it is an EU and National Exchequer funded programme. So I'm just going to run through a couple of slides that have been prepared here this evening for you to give you an idea of how we've come to be presenting a workshop on renewable energy this evening, and you'll see how it fits in then to the LEADER Transitional Programme for 2021-2022, and as well as that, where it fits into the other green energy promotions too. So if you just bear with me now, I'll get that started and trying to just maximize my screen here. I think I'm going to have to just get unblocked there for a minute. Sorry. Lawrence, I'm just trying to get the slideshow going, and it's blocked by one of the icons at the top.
I think if you try the top left of your screen, does that allow you to, or is there anything on the bottom right of your screen there as well?
Yep.
There you go. Actually, try
there we are. I have it now. Here we go.
Perfect.
I'm just going to minimize our images here in the corner as well. So as I was explaining, LEADER is an EU and National Exchequer funded programme providing assistance to communities and enterprises in Ireland. 30 years and 25 in Westmeath. And as you can see, there is a transitional programme in place at the moment. This is in place and raises priorities for assistance to communities and businesses post-COVID. One of the areas, of course, would be digital remote working, but this evening we're here with regard to climate change, the environment and the green economy. And there are themes that LEADER follows. Each LEADER area has a local development strategy, which is set out under several themes, 3 of them, and the third being rural environment. As you can see, 1 would be economic development, enterprise development and job creation there, and 2, social inclusion. So we would be looking at hard to reach communities, basic services, youth within that category. And rural environment is what we're speaking about this evening. And I suppose we ask ourselves, why are we here today? Why is this a particular programme and renewable energy is underneath rural environment? The sub-theme is addressing several aspects of protection, conservation, education, awareness, and as you can see, the renewable energy of our environment has become very much to the fore. The sub-themes that we're concentrating on this evening is sub-theme 3.3. So here this evening, we're hoping to be able to help with the installation of renewables in community facilities. And these may also be enhancements, as well as outdoor recreational areas, as well, and just to look at the overall structure of how to go forward, perhaps with renewable energy, which ORS is going to go through with you after we've given the overview for LEADER. And there have been several energy initiatives undertaken by Westmeath Community Development under LEADER previously. The Renewable Energy Conference, and in the first slide you will have seen there was a photograph of Bernie Levy and Peter Ormond, and they were accompanied as well by Duncan Stewart. There was a conference that everybody attended, so that gave rise to targeting aspects to be addressed. Workshops with communities and business farming sectors, and energy audits conducted for 13 organisations, groups throughout the county. Some of you will have been partaking in that. I think earlier this year, we had scheduled this workshop for July. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be, but if anybody is interested, of course, in finding out about how those were conducted, you know, we can be contacted after this session. So with regard to the aid that's available and for the development of renewable energy, we have been given a budget in the transitional funding of 112,500. The total budget available looks large. Now, URI itself is the European Union fund that is there now since COVID has actually happened, and it's there to try and bring some stability back to groups in rural areas. So there is a fund of 50,000 there as well for studies to be able to assess perhaps the needs of your group and the structure and how it can be addressed. There's a grant of up to 90% for community groups. And the installation of renewable energy with its associated costs that would be a good fit, I suppose, with leaders' funding structure would be 75% of the grant aid. So, of course, I'm sure that you may have more questions that are particularly specific to your group. If you do need to contact us at Leader, please do feel free to do so. The number given is Mullingar based, as you can see, but we also have an office in Athlone. Peter is based in Athlone. And all our email addresses are at the bottom. As you know, this is being recorded, so you will be able to go back and make reference to it, but also our website will be able to help you, and you will find us if you Google Westmeath Community Development, and it should bring you straight to us for any more details, but certainly we look forward to hearing from you. Now,
thank you, Anna. I assume
everybody was able to hear me clearly. That was one of the issues earlier on, the sound. So I think if we can hand back to you there now.
Perfect.
Lawrence.
And I think you've stopped sharing your screen, so I'm just going to take over.
I have indeed. Yeah.
And
thank you very much to everybody for attending this evening.
Perfect. Okay. And I'll just get you to confirm if you can see my slideshow there. Is that correct? You can see my first slide there. Okay, I'm pretty sure I'm sharing my screen there. So
yeah,
perfect. Thanks very much there for whoever followed up. So look, good evening, I suppose, and a special thanks to everyone on the call here for very much taking the time to drop in and listen to me talk for the evening. I suppose I'm very much delighted to be with you here virtually. I suppose previously we would have been doing some of these presentations in person, but as you're all aware with the implications of COVID, that we're very much still in our virtual environment at the moment. But of course, you're all very welcome, irregardless to the presentation today on the topic of energy efficiency and renewable energy technologies in community buildings in particular, which has been brought to you by the Westmeath Community Development team and of course the ORS team based out of here in Mullingar, County Westmeath also. So I suppose my aim out of this evening is that hopefully from the material and the information that we deliver during this presentation, that you'll come away with a better insight into how to first of all understand what really drives energy use in a community building, alongside the measures that can be taken typically taken, I suppose, to reduce energy use and make these types of buildings more energy efficient and more self-sufficient in respect to renewable energy technology specifically within these buildings as well. So look, we'll aim to give you an understanding of the next steps after this call as well, alongside also introducing a number of the core SEAI funding supports that can also be used in tandem with the LEADER funding and to help in identifying measures that can actually be complete on your building, alongside highlighting I suppose the supports that are there to help in the capital costs of many of these projects as well. I'll also take this opportunity to introduce to you the SEAI Sustainable Energy Communities Programme, as I think it's very relevant to the audience on the call here this evening. I think you might be very interested to know more about this if you're not already involved, and to really get a sense of how communities and community groups from the ground up are very much strategically working towards becoming more energy aware, more energy efficient, and more self-sufficient with that specific focus on energy efficiency and renewable energy technologies. And of course, as I just mentioned, there are a wide range of supports that are available for communities that do join this particular network to really help you along this journey. So look, before I go any further, I would like to give special thanks to the Westmeath Community Development team, and particularly Anna and the guys on the call here this evening for all the support that the staff have done in I suppose, helping to organise this, and for reaching out to ORS as well to kind of help us, help you guys in this journey as well. So look, with that, I'll move on to my next slide. So look, usually, as I mentioned before, we deliver these types of workshops or presentations, you know, pre-COVID, of course, we do these in person, and that always gives us the opportunity to kind of casually walk the floor, and where there's a small number of people like we have on the call here today, it just gives you the opportunity to just chat the group and introduce yourself really. But it's not really as straightforward when you're using virtual platforms like Zoom. But nonetheless, I would like to take this opportunity to formally introduce myself to the room and just give you a bit of a high-level summary of my own professional background and experience. So, look, as you know, my name is Lawrence O'Reilly. I'm a senior energy consultant working alongside the ORS energy management team here in Mullingar. For the past 2 years, I've been working remotely out of my home in my own little office here, just across the border in Dangan, County Offaly. So I'm not too far away from you guys at all. As I said, I'm an energy consultant, and my primary role involves providing advice on energy upgrades and analysing energy consumption for, you know, both domestic and non-domestic buildings. In the past, I've also worked as a building energy rating or a BER assessor and a technical advisor, which have really exposed me to a lot of retrofits in the domestic, the residential and non-domestic sector. Both day to day, we do a lot of work with communities, and we act as county mentors under the SEAI Sustainable Energy Communities Programme. I myself mainly work out of Leash and Offaly, but a number of our colleagues work within Longford, work within Westmeath, and so you're probably used to potentially meeting some of those guys on the roads on this whole topic of energy efficiency and energy management. We also do a lot of work in terms of SEAI grant inspections. So like a lot of the grant programs that we'll talk about here that you guys should be looking at, or will hopefully be looking at for some of the projects that you identify for your own buildings. You know, you might see the likes of ourselves out on site inspecting those. So if it's the likes of a single wind turbine or a series of solar PV panels that you've been grant approved, it's typically the likes of ourselves that would inspect these. I suppose most of these inspections are happening now and over the next few weeks and months in the build up to Christmas. And so it is a little bit manic, and it's going to give you a bit of perspective on the timelines as well. This is typically the core time when all of these grant aided projects are reviewed and signed off and capital are paid back into community groups. I have included my email address here. So look, if you have any questions that maybe we don't reach or get to this evening, absolutely feel free to follow up with myself after the workshop, and I'd be more than happy to help or guide you as best as I can. A little bit about ORS and who are ORS. So ORS are a prominent Irish multidisciplinary building consultancy, and we're based all across Ireland and into the UK, and are celebrating their 30th year in 2021. The firm offers design, planning, and management advice that is supported by expert guidance in energy efficiency. ORS have a team of highly skilled designers, architects, consulting engineers, planners, scientists, and surveyors, all of which I suppose support in the delivery of all of their projects, working collaboratively as a team. Within ORS, there is a range of teams that provide that blended and bespoke service to their clients. And I suppose they're one of the only Irish consultancies offering this particular blended services. Although some clients might only require one service at a particular time, I think that support from other specialist fields is of significant value to clients in the range of different projects that they work on. And this model really helps ORS in ensuring the highest standards in quality and efficiency are achieved for the projects that they work on. To be more specific, and I suppose in terms of the energy management team here in ORS and the typical day-to-day services that they would provide. So ORS work closely with the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland on providing support to the public sector alongside a significant level of mentoring to communities throughout the likes of the Sustainable Energy Communities Programme, and with various bodies such as Westmeath Community Development and very similar bodies to that. So this involves providing basic energy advice, helping in community engagement, delivering the likes of workshops and energy management team presentations. ORS also conducts what's known as energy master plan studies, which are complete for community groups, which are essentially roadmaps for towns and villages that they can use to reduce energy use and utilize more renewable energy technologies locally, which is a strong part, I think, of the message that's been delivered here today by Westmeath Community Development as well. ORS also provides energy audits and energy work project management on a range of energy efficiency and renewable energy projects, whereby your range of teams supporting the design, construction and delivery of these projects. The team also carries out a wide range of inspections on behalf of the SEAI on energy projects that were grant state funded, which really involves going to various different sites across the country and making sure, I suppose, that all the works that are complete are as per the agreements of the grant, and everything is as it should be. So look, that just kind of gives you a high level summary of myself and a bit on ORS and the energy management team here as well, just to give you a bit of context on, I suppose, who's speaking to you and where they're coming from. But really, I suppose, on to the primary agenda and focus of this evening. And I am conscious of time, and look, we'll aim to get through all of these items as quickly as we can, to try and, I suppose, help you appropriately understand why what we talk about this evening is relevant in the context of the workshop. So look, we'll start off by briefly introducing the topic of today's workshop, highlighting what is actually meant by energy efficiency and renewable technologies in the context of community buildings. Before we move on to, I suppose, the main items that you likely want to hear a bit more about and discuss a bit more at the end. So we'll touch on some core aspects that really help prepare the likes of a community building for improving energy use on site. So this will flow into a high-level summary of what approaches are typically taken in respect to improving your energy profile. Before we start to dive into some of the specific actions that can actually be taken to practically reduce energy use. And that would range from your very, very basic behavioral changes all the way through to your more complex changes. We'll talk briefly about the next steps if you're starting out in this process, which would be energy audits, before concluding my section on the various SEAI funded supports that are available out there that are a huge help if you are looking at any of these energy efficiency or renewable energy projects to really help in the implementation of those. So look, the slides today include links to many of the resources that I mentioned, and again, very happy to share these slides with the group afterwards, along with the recording of the presentation as well, to further, I suppose, to further help you get a sense of what to do next and where to go and where the resources are and the beginning points are for the implementation of any of these resources. So with that, I will move on to the next slide. So as mentioned, this guidance delivered here it's designed as an introduction, if you like, to the issues that would typically surround energy use in a community type building, typical, I suppose, of what we expect to see across all of Ireland. So really the primary aim here this evening is to support community groups, building managers and yourselves in relation to community building specifically, in improving the overall energy efficiency and energy profile of your typical buildings, such as your schools and whether it's your town halls, aspects of churches as well as some of the facilities you might see in typical GAA clubs, so whether it's the likes of your clubhouse, some of the energy users that are actually on site on the field and the pitch. We see a lot of GAA facilities now with retrofitted gyms and such on. So just to give you a sense of what can be done to kind of help reduce energy use in these buildings and make them more carbon friendly. I appreciate that different community groups and people involved will have a range of drivers that very much encourage them to improve energy performance. But it's fair to say that the benefits are very wide ranging from, someone might just want to reduce the energy bills, really just save money. Someone might be driven very much so by the whole climate change agenda, and really seeing a tangible reduction in carbon emissions. From equipping buildings to be actually more comfortable and warmer, as well as enhancing the optics of the locality as well. You know, there's no doubt to say if you see a fine community building that has some pretty decent renewable energy technologies installed, it is a good image for the village. It is a good image for the town as well as the community group themselves. In respect to actually making a difference then, so I suppose there are a range of measures that can be complete from, you know, as I touched on earlier, very basic behavioural changes all the way through to very advanced, and I suppose they might look like complex solutions. But before I suppose any of these can be explored in great detail, it's very, very important to very much understand the specific energy balance or energy use profile that is unique to your particular building. So as an example, on the slide here we have a pie chart, and this is typical of what you, I suppose, what you would initially need to develop and understand prior to going down the road of selecting projects at random, you know. So developing a chart like this, which essentially illustrates the breakdown of where energy is used on site, it's hugely important to help you in making targeted and informed decisions on what aspects of the facility you should really focus on. So right from, I suppose, the off, we can see that, you know, the space heating for this random building, if we look at our pie chart, accounts for 70% of this particular building's energy use, which wouldn't be uncommon. But it tells you a story in itself. So it tells you that this is where your significant energy users are likely to be in this particular building. And I think relative to the majority of buildings as well. And it's also a sign of where you have most potential to cut down on your energy use and your energy costs. But look, this doesn't mean that you ignore the other sources of energy use as well. But it does help when you're trying to decide and prioritize on areas to focus on within the building. Now look, developing this type of chart will require a bit of analysis, and it'll require analysis of historical energy use, which is, you know, typically through energy bills over a 1 or 2 year period. And this type of analysis is what you would expect to have completed as part of, you know, the early stages of an energy audit, and really starts the process of identifying and understanding projects that will make up what's known as your register of opportunities. Or in other words, I suppose, the list of potential energy saving projects that are applicable to your specific building based on what was identified through the audit of the particular building. So when it comes to community buildings and community groups, the most efficient way of delivering results, as I suppose is the case with anything, is very much through the involvement of the right people. So before you start to plunge into high-level energy audits or starting to pluck energy projects out of the sky, you want to try to put a bit of structure in terms of energy management and who's responsible for energy management within your community group by bringing the right people on board. A key driver in improving energy performance in the long run, it's down to, I suppose, the motivation of those that are in charge, or I suppose are in part responsible for overseeing this area. With energy, it's a very wide-ranging subject, and I suppose if you're not overly familiar with the jobs that need to be done, they can become daunting and overwhelming. And it's because of this that we would recommend, from our own experience, that, you know, you try to develop a team that's built around, I suppose, the strength of the members that are within the club or the group or the committee. So it's really important to bring in people with any technical knowledge, as well as people who might understand finance, and people who are really good communicators, who are strong with engaging people. And from here, you're looking to set up, you know, that robust and dedicated, I suppose it's not going to be a formal energy management team, but it is a form of that. It is a form of, you know, a robust group of people that are like-minded, that are driven and have unique skills that are coming together to manage energy within your facility. And it doesn't have to be a huge team. The size of the team is relative, I suppose, to the building, and I suppose the number of members that you might have in your committee. But, you know, having at least 2 or 3 members part of a team like this, it is a major help. So kind of advice and guidance on a team like this, I think it's very important that this team meets as regularly as they can, where members, I suppose, are given specific roles and responsibilities. It provides a platform for ideas to be generated, and it really provides an opportunity to also keep the wider group up to speed on what's actually happening in terms of energy management and energy performance. I suppose in respect to the overall community or committee. So these meetings can also be a great way of bringing in guests and having guests come in and talk. So whether that's someone from the likes of Westmeath Community Development, for example, or whether it's someone from the SEAI or a local contractor or another community group that's very similar to yours, that has maybe done some work that you could actually learn from and even replicate. So I think all across Ireland we're seeing energy saving projects in all sectors. Community sectors is absolutely different, and I think we can be inspired by a lot of what's happened across the country and learn from that. I also mentioned earlier that energy management and energy improvement, it is a great way to showcase how progressive your club or your organisation or your community group is. So I would encourage that any works that you do, that they are publicised through the likes of social media and possibly through a newsletter that keeps everybody up to date, as well as emailing lists. And this can really help. It can really help you to reach other members of the community who, I suppose, they might be able to help. They might have core skills in this area, and if you weren't using these platforms, they might never hear about what you're doing. But it also might help with the likes of any donations or sponsors coming on board locally. As I think it's fair to say that the whole climate change and the carbon emission story is huge on the agenda right now, and I think a lot of people are willing to help where they can, and particularly when it comes to the community. And finally, it's very important that you engage as early as possible with the building owner or the building manager, if that is the case, and look to strengthen, suppose even develop or strengthen any existing relationships that you might have within the local authority, and in particular the planning sections, as some of the projects, depending on their scale, may actually require planning permission and so on. So it's just to strengthen those relationships to help you in that process. So with that, I think we'll take this slide here will just help to take a look at some, I suppose, at a high level, look at what can typically be done to improve energy efficiency within a community, or I suppose indeed any type of building. I suppose if maybe you are part of a community building organisation, I would call it here. As we said a few slides ago, it's very important to have a very clear picture of what you're trying to do to help you fully understand what the task is and what you're trying to achieve. So typically when it comes to energy performance, we're looking to achieve initially a reduction in energy bills and have our buildings performance become more energy efficient and to reduce our carbon emissions and support our future in fuel security as well. We all know that's an issue going forward, and to become more self-sufficient through the introduction of renewable energy technologies, I suppose, where practical and feasible, and also to possibly inspire the wider community around us as well. So this process needs to start with the development of the committed and dedicated energy team and the possible development of an energy charter or an energy performance commitment that's made from the group, and I think everybody involved in the group is part of this. So it's really a top-down commitment from the community group themselves in terms of how they view energy management and within their own little organisation. The next step is to then understand where the building is at right now in respect to energy use and what opportunities are here that can be implemented to help support this, to help improve energy efficiency. So this is where an energy audit would be required. In short, an energy audit would typically present three types of principal improvements. These are categorized at first. Your simple measures, which could be considered very low cost, which may have a low but sometimes high cost saving. The next are moderate measures, which will have typically an increased cost based on your lower level and provide moderate savings. And then the final suite of measures are often more complex with a high implementation cost, but I suppose they can also have high energy savings associated with them as well. So this approach is really all about, in principle, picking the low-hanging fruit first. So essentially the easy wins that will cost very little sometimes, and allow for some nice energy savings across the board. However, when projects are being decided or developed, it's always very important to consider the energy hierarchy, similar to the one that we've shown on the right of our slide here. But really, I suppose the principal focus here is on reducing demand of energy initially, and this is your foundation, and from this you build up to reducing energy losses across the building, and to improving energy efficiency, and to finally the generation of energy, which is essentially the use of renewable energy technologies across the building. So what we're saying is, you're starting off with reducing energy, first of all, the energy demand. You're looking at improving energy efficiency on site thereafter. And that then allows you to effectively bring in renewable energy technologies and to support the remaining energy use or energy demand that's now on the facility or building. So I suppose with that, we'll start off and talk a little bit about what would be considered a low-level measure, and that would be behavioral change, where I suppose many examples have shown that there is significant potential to reduce a building's energy demand simply through ensuring that, I suppose, the people who use the building understand how to actually effectively and efficiently use things like, the heating system that's installed there, and that they can comfortably use the heating controls, such as your programmers, your timers, your thermostats. Like even after a new boiler is installed, modern heating controls can really seem complex and result in inappropriate use, and can kind of result in higher energy consumption as a result. And that's just simply because the user just wasn't aware of how to work the new system. So you've kind of gotten yourself in a position where you've installed a very high efficient air to water heat pump or a boiler, but nobody knows how to use the system because it might seem a bit complex. And that goes down to behavior, that goes down to training and awareness, which can have a huge impact in relation to energy demand and energy consumption on any particular building, and community centre is no different. And the same can be said for simple items like your lighting or your appliances. So with that, it's really important that appropriate and proper training and guidance is provided if you're to really try and make an attempt to reduce energy use, and even invest in some of those complex heating equipment that we just referenced there now. So this process of behavioral change really starts with very basic energy awareness, which might be defined as a targeted campaign at making the building users aware of energy on site, to be aware of the fuels that are used on site, and to reduce energy use, just to make them aware of and conscious of their energy use. And I suppose to also practice energy sufficiency as well as energy efficiency. This type of campaign can be very simple to roll out and very cost effective, starting out with simple engaging posters that are put up along the facility that provides the reader with very simple facts on, I suppose, how energy can be saved. So whether it's simply switching off light switches, turning down thermostats for hot water systems or for certain rooms, and closing windows and doors, and very basic stuff. It's essentially a lot of the basic good habits that will really help in minimizing the use of energy in a building, and particularly when you have a lot of different users coming in and out as well. You can allow a lot of different people with different habits, so it's to try and align them, to try and support this overall project. So this can then grow to more, I suppose, to more formal tasks like hosting the likes of workshops, similar to what's happening here this evening, or developing partnerships with the SCAI or other community groups, and having basic training provided. And sometimes these can be provided for free as well. So it's just about knowing that there is a resource there, linking in with them, and just availing of that free information and taking it from there. A really nice idea is to have maybe energy awareness days, and alongside those being formed switch off and turn down campaigns regularly. And if you can, trying to monitor what impact that has on energy use. So if you are to see your energy bill month on month, or your oil or gas usage month on month as a result of some of these campaigns, it might give you a nice opportunity to kind of showcase to people that, look, we're actually making a difference and we're doing very little, we're just changing our habits. And so it's very, very important to consider that. This then brings us on to our next item, and I suppose we're into the space of more advanced measures that can be, I suppose they will be defined as physical improvements. We've spoken about behavioural, but now we're more into the physical elements of the building. Traditionally, many community type buildings will have poor insulation, and they might have older, more traditional lighting, both internally and externally, alongside inefficient heat systems that use carbon-heavy fuels like oil or gas, and that often have really, really poor levels of control as well. And look, this is all largely due to the age and the era of construction. It is what it is, and that's what it was back then. But this does provide ample opportunity. But it's fair to say, I suppose, that the cost of replacing or upgrading these aspects of a building, it can vary significantly. But in saying that, the more most energy efficient measures, they will eventually pay for themselves through the savings they generate, from that direct reduction in the building's energy bills as a result. Some of the core or key improvements which you may consider as part of these physical improvements would include the likes of upgrading the building's insulation and draft stripping. So this might include sealing any noticeable air gaps around your external doors or your windows, any attic access points or hatches, and in or around your skirting boards as well, and around any surfaces that any surfaces that may be penetrating the external fabric of the building. Very common example would be the likes of your water pipes coming down from the attic. Very common. You see it in houses, you see it in commercial buildings, community buildings, where you see a 1/2 inch water pipe or your typical electrical conduit feed through like a 2, 3, or 4 inch hole. And when you add all these up, it can actually be fairly significant in terms of the overall surface area of air gap that's allowing just unwanted air to just come into the building that's causing uncomfortable drafts. And these all do have a significant impact on the building's ability to hold and retain heat. Now, it's very important to mention that when it comes to draft stripping and air leaks, this does not mean intentional ventilation points like your fans or your hit and miss vents or your permanent vents that you might see up in the wall. These are very, very important to ensure that you have good quality of fresh air, and that fresh air is provided, which is very, very important for the occupants, and it also helps to prevent the build-up of mold and damp internally, which can cause significant problems as well. So just to be aware of that. So I suppose from that point then, that brings us on to your insulation upgrades. And this really involves the entire externally exposed surface area of the building, which are linked with internally heated spaces. So this can range from the likes of the attic or the roof space, and the external wall. It can also be internal walls that are into unheated spaces within a community centre. It's quite common to see that. And floor insulation, and can also range from measures would be typical spray foam insulation to the likes of your corrugated roofs, for example, if they were there, standard mineral wool that you might roll out between joists in a typical pitched roof, typical equipment that you would see in your house. Pumped bead for cavities, so if you have a twin block cavity wall, pumped bead in between there, or external or internal wall insulation where you might have precast concrete, or you might have a block on flat. And that kind of goes all the way through then to upgrading the likes of your external doors and your windows. A lot of this stuff I think you'd be very familiar with, very, very basic stuff to mention. It's also important to note that in some instances, when you are upgrading the external insulation of any particular building, whether it's domestic or non-domestic, if you do alter the building fabric beyond the specific percentage of the overall exposed surface area, you might actually trigger the requirement to comply with part of the Irish building regulations, which will require you to take a more holistic approach. So it's not a case of just focusing on the walls. If you actually insulate too much of the external wall, you will have to comply with part of the building regulations for an existing building. It's not a ridiculously onerous task to have to comply with that, but it does request that you kind of take a more holistic approach into the entire building to try and make it overall more energy efficient, which is no bad thing either. So I suppose after you've addressed the insulation and the air tightness, the next step would be to, I suppose, focus on your heating system that provides for any space heating and water heating within the building. So this will involve, examining the existing systems that are actually there, and establish if they're fit for purpose, and can an alternative be put in place that might be more efficient, that might be more practical, and something that consumes less carbon intensive fuels also. Heating controls are also of huge significance here as well. So even with the most, efficient boiler or electric heating system or whatever you have, without, I suppose, a moderate to high level of time and temperature and zone of control, you're not going to get the most out of its performance. You're really not optimizing what you can get out of that system. I suppose more simple measures then that can help reduce energy waste from your boiler, it would involve insulating the likes of your hot water pipework, especially any elements that run through unheated spaces, like your attic that won't be heated at all. Oftentimes you see hot water pipework, it's externally going maybe from the boiler house into the building itself, and if those pipes aren't insulated, it's just going to be losing heat at a rapid rate, and that's just making your heating system work more, consume more fuel, and release more carbon emissions. So it all has a big impact in terms of what it actually does to your overall energy profile. I suppose to really understand the exact measures that you will implement here, it's very much dependent on the existing system that's within your place. I suppose the primary activity within the community building as well, alongside the existing profile of the insulation and airframes of the building. And that's really where your bespoke energy audit is of benefit here. It just gives you all of that information. It's very, very bespoke and not general for your own particular building. So staying on the physical improvements, similar to your heating system, lighting is a very big opportunity to reduce energy use if the building is relying on traditional bulbs, and that's both internally and externally. In some instances, it can be very, very simple to upgrade your lighting. It can be a simple swap of a bulb from to an LED or a CFL bulb. In other instances, this may involve replacing the entire fitting, which it can be more disruptive, probably not the right word to say, but it can be a bit more work involved, but it is equally effective in that instance as well. It's also likely that the lighting within your community centre is controlled manually through your typical wall-mounted switch, and that's fine, but it does leave the door open, excuse the pun, for human error, where bad habits might exist. And it goes back to our behavioural change programme, I suppose, at the start of the presentation. Look, some people will just have a habit of leaving lights on when the room is not in use, or I suppose even if there's no requirement for a light even to be on in that room, if the level of natural daylight coming in through windows and such is appropriate. So to try and help mitigate any of those issues, you can use the likes of motion sensors, time sensors, daylight sensors, and all of these help in eliminating that risk of human error and just needlessly leaving equipment running. And I suppose if you are considering significant lighting upgrade or project, especially one that requires the actual full light fixtures to be replaced, it'd be a very, very good idea, and I think it'd be well advised to look at the controls and trying to get the best quality that you can with the resources that are available as well. And then finally, in terms of typical physical improvements and where potential might also exist, so you might look at the appliances that are used within the building. So items such as fridges and dishwashers, or any kind of computers or printers or any of that type of equipment, they can use a significant amount of energy, especially relative to newer models that have been developed and that are on the market currently. So I suppose it's not a case that you would kind of potentially go in and rip out every single appliance that's there and expect it to be a huge project. But what I would advise is that the next time I suppose the opportunity comes around to replace these, that you very much consider A-rated appliances. I think you will see a benefit of that. Just simply comparing one level to another, you'll see the energy use and the difference it'll have in terms of your energy bills and energy demand. I've also made a small reference to water use as well. Simple and cheap components like water flow restrictors can be very effective in reducing water output from showers and hot water taps within any type of setting. And that can take a load off the boiler and the hot water heating system. So essentially you're not using as much hot water as is required. Other measures are mentioned here, the likes of fuel flush toilets, repairing any leaks that you might have in your heating system or your water system, and rainwater harvesting as well. Look, I suppose some of those won't necessarily save on significant amounts of energy, but I suppose they are relevant in the wider story of energy efficiency or general efficiency of your building, managing waste and I suppose sustainability its overall definition. So I suppose you might have gotten the sense that the flow of the presentation and the recommendations that are made around improving energy performance within a community building, and indeed all occupied buildings of this type, revolves around reducing energy demand first, to improving energy efficiency on site, to then the generation of energy through renewable energy technologies. And I suppose this is typically the way of thinking, which you should look to apply to your own building as well. And it goes back to our energy hierarchy earlier on in the slide, and you'll see the smart energy living pyramid that we kind of referenced on each particular slide here as well. And it kind of follows that staged approach. And really that's just to ensure that I suppose any capital or any money that's spent on energy projects is spent wisely and efficiently, and that you follow that kind of stepped approach. And it also assists in ensuring the best return on investment in any technology that you invest. So whether it's simple flow restrictor or an LED bulb, all the way up to, you know, a suite of solar PV modules on the roof. Certain renewable energy technologies will also, it won't work to their full potential if some of the earlier measures are not implemented effectively. And I suppose in this instance, I'm specifically referencing the likes of heat pumps, which really need an ideal low heat loss internal environment to operate at optimal high efficiency. And this is what's known as a fabric first approach, and it's hugely important in this context. And that's why I kind of focused on that at the early stages of our presentation. And of course, once you've exhausted all of the other best practice approaches that we've mentioned earlier, the benefits of renewable energy technologies can be hugely significant for any of these types of buildings. So these would include, you know, offsetting, these benefits would include offsetting the building's electrical grid use. It allows you to become more self-sufficient in that instance, and it allows you to utilize natural resources and free resources that you have in your own area. These will reduce your electricity spend and your fuel spend. You also have zero carbon emissions from your renewable energy technologies. It gives you the potential as well to incorporate battery storage. And so if you are generating electricity at off-peak time, having battery storage allows you to store that energy and then use it during periods when, you know, a particular building is actually in use. You know, take a GEA facility, for example, might not be used during the day when the potential for solar electricity generation is at its highest. If you don't have a battery storage facility or resource there, that can just be wasted. So it's to try and understand what technologies are there to supplement these smart renewable technologies to get the best out of them for your own particular scenario. And another one of the benefits is that there's a real visual draw to renewable energy technologies when you see them on the site of any particular building, and it can really help to enhance your image. And as well as this, I suppose hopefully you'll have that upcoming ability to export any I suppose excess electricity back onto the grid for a fixed rate. Now that hasn't come in just yet. There was public consultation earlier this year, but the latest is that may come live in the final quarter of 2021, but we just keep our ears perked to see if anything actually happens there. So in regard to the types then of renewable energy technologies that I suppose will be most common and that you will typically see on community type buildings, they'll be broken up into two primary categories. Those that generate electricity, and then those that transfer thermal energy or heat. So when it comes to electricity type systems, the two main systems that I think you're probably interested in would be solar PV, otherwise known as solar photovoltaic panels, or micro wind systems, which is basically a wind turbine site relative to the demand on site and the resources that are actually available within that I suppose area that you have available to you as well. Regarding hot water production, you have solar thermal panels, you have the likes of your heat pumps that were mentioned earlier, as well as biomass boilers. Solar thermal panels are very, very similar to your PV panels, but I suppose visually they're very similar to your PV panels, but instead they actually help supplement the hot water requirement for the building that can be used to support hot water for the likes of your showers or any hot water taps within the building. The other two, your heat pumps and your biomass, they're both heating systems, essentially like boilers, but are zero carbon and carbon neutral respectively. I suppose the decision of which to choose, particularly in respect to electricity generation, is based on what's available within and around your facilities, such as available roof space and the actual amount of energy that's used on site, alongside the pattern in which you actually use that energy as well. But there's no doubt that there's no doubt of the huge benefits, I suppose, of incorporating renewables. But again, the best practice is once you've exhausted the more basic measures mentioned previously first, and really optimize energy efficiency and reduce energy demand on site first to get the most out of these systems to get the best return for yourselves. So the next step I'd advise, I suppose, for anyone who is starting out in this process, is it's all about making that action plan. And that really starts with the energy audit that we referenced there, if you haven't already got one. Energy management is also considered, it is considered an ongoing cycle of continuous improvement. And that's illustrated on our picture here. So basically, this is something that I suppose you and the team and the committee, you should constantly be reviewing and revisiting to try and improve it and to try and advance it. Because sometimes you take baby steps, sometimes you take big steps, but there's always gains that can be made and improvements that can be made. So the first step as part of your energy audit, just to give you a little bit of context around that, is really to establish the building's current energy baseline. Essentially how much energy is being used annually, and that's by all sources. And you want that in kilowatt hours, like what you see on your electricity bill, or liters, like you might see on your oil bill, or tons if you're burning solid fuel, or kg. The spend should also be recorded, so your fuel spend alongside the fuel types and the associated carbon emissions as well. But it's not just energy use in kilowatt hours or energy spend in euro per year. You also want to know right now, for our current energy baseline, what's our carbon emissions, and that can be easily converted into trees or hot air balloons, whatever you want, to give you some simple understanding, put it into perspective of what's actually happening. The baseline analysis should also monitor the building's use profile. So like peak times, and should include, I suppose, a review of the energy profile over at least a 1 year period. Now, COVID over the last 2 years, I suppose, will definitely skew your results a bit. A lot of your buildings and facilities would have been closed throughout a lot of that time. So, if you are having an energy audit done, just be cognizant of that. You might need to go back to, your 2018 or 2019 pre-COVID data to get a more accurate sense of what's actually happening on site. If you use your COVID year, your energy could be down by 60–70%. It's not a great baseline to start with. Next year, your baseline will actually have increased, and you're thinking, sure, we've done nothing, we've gone worse, but it's not actually the case. It's not a like-for-like comparison. The walk around is the next step, and as it sounds, this is essentially it's a walkthrough visual inspection of the building, where you look at the existing insulation and where it's visually apparent, where you can see it. It is a non-destructive survey most of the time, unless otherwise requested. And you look at the likes of your glass stripping, and you look at the current boiler, and there could be several different heaters within the facility. So again, analysing these, are they appropriate for particular spaces that they're serving, as well as the controls. Again, you're looking at your lighting, you're looking at your appliances, and you can also look at your water use if you wish as well. From this review, your options can be put in place, and these should be categorized into low, medium, and high level opportunities, and with cost and carbon saving very clear. And these will help you, I suppose, to prioritize which ones should be implemented. The next step is your action plan, or your roadmap in essence. So depending on the outcome of your audit, options need to be prioritized based on funding and resources that are available, and with timelines and supports that I suppose highlight to kind of help how these can actually be complete. I suppose, like anything, especially something that's community based, it's typically unlikely that all of the changes identified or the opportunities identified can be implemented in all one go, and that's just down to resources within that particular environment, and that's fair enough. So the team should really look to, I suppose, to put time to review and reassess how you've kind of moved based on the projects that you've selected, but also to monitor and review what impact the recent changes are actually having on energy use. As really, that's the core objective here, isn't it? Really, it's to try and measure and understand how you've moved relative to your baseline in a positive sense. And I think understanding and seeing those positive changes is of absolute importance if you're looking to really progress energy efficiency and energy management within your organization. So look, I suppose kind of wrapping up here as quick as I can. I'm conscious that I've probably spoken a little bit longer than I intended to, but this slide here just presents to you a number of supports, I suppose, from an SCAI perspective, because that's who we work with mainly, that you can use to help realize some of these projects. The first thing you'll see on the slide is the BEC. In blue, you have Better Energy Communities. That is a link to that particular website, that particular resource on the SCAI webpage. So when you have access to these slides, control click on that to bring it straight to that website, and we'll give you a bit more information in relation to that particular resource. This is essentially a grant support for energy projects, and so it will support the likes of building fabric upgrades, like was mentioned earlier, and technology and system upgrades, so the likes of your heating systems or heating controls, and more complex heating control systems as well, the likes of your BMS or energy management systems, as well as the integration of renewable energy sources as well. So it will support the likes of your solar, photovoltaic. It can support micro wind. Very uncommon. It's not very common to see that type of project. And it'll also support the implementation of electric chargers as well. And that's a really nice one to talk about for community facilities. So promoting the use of electric vehicles for the likes of your members and people who are on the board who give up their time, that if they do have an EV, that it's nice to have an EV charger there to help supporting them as well. Typically BEC will provide 30 to 50% funding on these projects, and for a community-based organization it's typically 50%. Applications are for 2022 projects should open in the next, I would say, month or so. They typically open the end of October, and they stay open until January. Now the BEC is a competitive grant, and when the money is gone, the money is gone. So if you do have an energy audit complete, if you have ideas that you want to implement, if the resources are there, it would be worth following up with that in the next couple of weeks, next couple of months to get your application in. Look, if you need any support and where to go to lodge an application, just follow up with me later on. You also have Exceed, known as Excellence in Energy Efficient Design, more so geared towards the public sector, more so geared towards larger organizations, but we have seen it used in community facilities as well. Again, 30 to 50% funding, and this includes initial energy audits as well. So the BEC just funds the project, the physical project, where the Exceed can fund the design, but you're probably looking at more complex designs here, very complex building management systems and stuff like that may not necessarily be applicable to the types of buildings we're dealing with here today. But it is important to be aware that it is there, and it does support energy efficiency and renewable energy technology measures. I suppose additionally then you have the SCAI supports and grants for EV charging points. I mentioned that earlier, but there are also the likes of your SCAI's Energy Academy, which provides training for organizations, for groups, for different bodies to try and help them understand energy management. You're not going to become, I suppose, an energy expert at the end of it, but you will get some core competencies that really will help you to understand energy management and best practice, and can support in your overall agenda here as well. You also have the SME Energy Audit Voucher. I put this in today, but I'm not actually sure if this is applicable to community centres. This is a €2,000 voucher for SMEs to get an energy audit done. There is a fixed criteria of what an SME is defined as. I know public sector might be supported to a certain degree in this, and it might be worth further investigating to see if there's a €2,000 voucher available for any community centres as well. Almost lodge an application, it's either refused or it's accepted, and it doesn't actually take that long. I suppose a lot of you people are all, you're all part of the community, you're all working in your community. There is the Energy and Education Programme, which is predominantly schools based. And this is a huge progressive initiative that SCAI have been running over the last number of years. And it's the best place to start if you're really looking to get people interested in energy management. We start with kids, and they're bringing all this information home to their families. They're really starting positive stories, positive information, all the rest of it. There's great learning to be got from that. And then finally you have the SSRH, which is the support scheme for renewable heat. That is a separate grant for the installation of biomass boilers, heat pumps, and of course for biomass boilers and heat pumps, mainly down the agri side. We see a lot of poultry farms, piggeries. We see nursing homes sometimes, but it could be used within the community. I know there was a reference to the farming sector here as well earlier. They might find something in the SSRH that might be benefit to them as well. And I'll finally wrap up by mentioning the SEAI's SEC program. You're all part of the community here. You might already be familiar with the Sustainable Energy Community Program, but basically the SEC program, it is a platform that was it's a network that was developed by the SEAI a number of years back to try and help communities shape energy efficiency, energy management, and the whole decarbonization story from the ground up. So really help let communities shape that. And there are a number of benefits by being registered on the SEC and being part of the committee. I'd say a lot of your communities are actually already registered SECs within the area if you're not already part of them yourselves. But basically, being part of the SEC program, it does provide support, it provides training, it provides workshops, it provides mentor support in relation to energy management. It allows you to work with the wider community as well. So just expand beyond your own facility. A huge part of the SEC program is there is a 100% funded community energy master plan, which does give you the potential to have your own facility if you're part of the committee to be energy audited and to have that register of opportunities be developed. And so it's just one thing to be aware of. If you do want any more information on that program, I can put you in contact with your county mentor, that is Isabella Donnelly for Westmeath. And that pretty much wraps up the presentation from my side. And look, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me today. And I'll open the floor to any questions that you have. But just remember, you're all on mute there, guys. So if you do want to unmute yourselves, I think you can manually do that. But again, if there's something that maybe you want to reach out afterwards, if maybe you're not comfortable talking in front of the group here, just send myself an email, and yeah, we'll follow up with as much information as we have and try and help you as best we can. So yeah, thanks very much, and I'll open the floor there. Don't know if anybody's asking questions or if I'm just not getting any feedback. And again, it's no problem if there are no questions. That's absolutely fine. Likewise, you just have my contact details, so you can very easily follow up with Anna or any of the guys on the team, and I'm sure they'll get the questions back to myself and answer them as best as they can.
Lawrence, I'd just like to say thank you very much for your presentation this evening, and there have been lots of pointers there that I think will be a good starting point, if not for continuation for people who have already started implementing a lot of the strategies that you've been suggesting, and as well as that, of course, in terms of looking at other organizations who might be able to supplement with match funding if any of the groups here and individuals tonight are going to be looking into seeking some funding support or an audit, perhaps, to steer them in the right direction. So that's absolutely been very useful to look at.
Yeah, very important to be aware of those resources that are available. I think sometimes in Ireland we have so many different supports, but sometimes they're always disjointed. They're not always communicating with each other. I think what you can see here is the likes of yourselves with the LEADER program, the likes of the SEAI, and communities are all kind of coming together now, and they're hopefully making it easier for the likes of community groups to get projects off paper and actually get them happening, because there's huge enthusiasm and desire to get these projects happening. It's just sometimes that resource can be difficult to get to. So hopefully this approach and this communication, open communication, will help that.
I just want to say thanks very much. I'm involved in a community centre here in Westmeath, and I suppose it's quite an old building, so the energy audit would be actually really, an idea to start anyway. So it's a fantastic presentation. Thank you very much. Very, very interesting. And if we had an open pocket, it'd be great to to do all that you suggested. But yeah, it was very, very good. Thank you so much.
No, you're very, very welcome. And I think, look, the energy audit is absolutely the right place to start. It gives you an action plan. It gives you logical place to start. But at the same time, funding and resources are always an issue, whether it's a community group or whether it's a homeowner or small business. But it's about understanding your low measures, your medium measures, your high measures. It gives you a chance to prioritize what you can do now and help to get funds in place. Because when you can measure, you can improve, and when you can show projects, you can get funding quicker. So it's about being prepared for when the opportunities come about as well. And I really think that's what the energy audit provides.
Great. Thanks very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Well, if that's it, Anna, I am happy enough to stop the recording, and I can wrap it up from there. And look, again, thanks very, very much. And if there's any questions, please feel free to follow up afterwards.
Yes, indeed. That's exactly it as well. And our contact details are going to be included on the slides that we'll be able to send out to everyone who participated this evening. So on behalf of Westmeath Community Development and the LEADER programme and my colleagues here this evening, I'd just like to say thank you all so much for coming out in your numbers. And I hope that you've found aspects certainly of this that are going to be very useful to you going forward. And looking forward to hearing from you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
Bye
you.
all.
Good night.
Have a good evening.
Bye bye.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks very much. Very good.
Very welcome.